You're listening to Spurscast, episode 656. My name is Paul Garcia, and I am your host here on the Spurscast. Today, I'll be joined by Project Spurs writer Benjamin Bornstein. With the NBA Draft Lottery approaching Tuesday, Ben and I answer your pre-lottery questions and discuss some projected second-round draft picks. Let's jump right into this episode. Ben, how you doing?
I am fantastic, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well myself. You know, we took a week off the Spurscast. There wasn't a lot of news out there. There is one news item we'll get to toward the end here, but aside from that, there hasn't been much going on. So Ben and I you were the last guest I had on, Ben, and we had kind of gone in depth at that 9th position for the draft. We talked about a scenario where if the Spurs get lucky and get a top 4 pick. We also discussed the 20 and 25th picks in that last episode. So Spurscast listeners, I do encourage you all to listen to Spurscast episode 655 if you want to go back and listen to Ben's analysis on a lot of those picks. But today, again, we're going to answer some social media questions that we threw out there, and then also get into some of the second round picks, because we didn't talk about any second round picks in that last episode. All right, Ben, let's dive into first our social media questions. So I had asked on my Twitter, first fans to send in some questions. We got 2 here that I wanted to mention from Twitter. The first one comes from @theGlobalSpur. They ask, if the Spurs don't improve their draft position, what would it realistically take to move up to the top 3? So let's pretend that, the odds just happen like they're supposed to, basically. So the top 3 picks end up in some sort of order. It's Houston, Orlando, Detroit. So in this question, let's pretend that it's Houston, Orlando, Detroit end up with the top 3. That's so I guess that's so go ahead and work from there, Ben. What do you think? Do you think, like, when I was entertaining this question, I was like, would either of those 3 teams even give up one of those top 3 picks with either Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, or Paolo Banchero? I just feel like I wouldn't if I was in their position. But what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, that would probably be the most likely scenario. Is you really have to, if you are going to move into the top 3 of this draft, you really got to give up something. You got to give up future picks along with a proven commodity, a proven player who's currently on your roster, and they have to have, kind of a decent amount of salary to be tradable.
Mm-hmm.
And the Spurs would get probably a little something in return, maybe a lesser future pick or a swap, something like that. But I think it's going to take a lot to get into this top 3, unless you're a team that can offer a future first and it's next year's first rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those 3 teams thinks your first rounder is going to be pretty high because you're going to be a bad team.
Exactly.
Because next year's draft is supposed to be very good. So if they have a first round pick next year and it's not lottery protected,
mm-hmm.
and you may be a lottery team, they may try and get it from you. But I imagine with how a lot of trades have gone down, there's going to be some protections on it. That has to be considered. So I don't know that it's realistic to move into the top 3 this year unless you have a grand, kind of a Godfather deal going on. And I'm not sure the Spurs have enough to make a Godfather deal.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, I think they could actually move out of the 9th pick, potentially move back, or they grab a future first rounder from someone else.
Yeah, so my thoughts is, like, what is the best package the Spurs could send to either of these 3 teams? And I would obviously, like you said, it has to be a known player now. Their lone all-star, I think DeJounte Murray has to be included there just because he is an all-star. You have to throw in, I think, number 9. And then maybe even they may not even be enough, 9 and DeJounte. You may have to throw in another young prospect, whether that's like Devin Vassell, Josh Primo, somebody like that, Keldon. I just don't know. Like, again, these teams are turning away Chet, Paolo, or Jabari, and again, so and I honestly, if I'm Houston, I just don't do that, because you have Jalen Green there, you're starting your new foundation. You've been a playoff contender for a number of years when you had James Harden there for all those years. So, like, you're kind of ready to take a few years here to basically build your roster out. Whereas Detroit and Orlando, I was really thinking maybe Orlando would do it just to get more competitive and get back in the playoff picture, but they were actually just in there a few years ago. I think it was like 2018. I looked, so it's not like when they had like Vucevic and Evan Fournier. They weren't a great team, but they were competitive. So again, I don't know if they're that desperate. They don't really have a big man right now as their foundation. I know they have a Wendell Carter, so like they're a team maybe. And then Detroit, they just got Cade, so you want to give him a partner. So again, I would love to match up Cade with Paolo or Jabari Smith or Chet. Exactly, like you want to have that second player for him. Whereas you could look at DeJounte and somebody else or the 9th pick. And I just don't. Again, that's just the timeline that these teams are on. And I don't think they're desperate enough to want to be competitive right now. And again, even when you throw in one of those Spurs players, I don't think that's going to get you to like a top 4 team in the East. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and the Magic actually have a couple of bigs that the Spurs might be interested. Like they have Mo Bamba.
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to come off Wendell Carter. They're not going to give him up. They really like him. But they have Jonathan Isaac, who has had injury issues and, frankly, some concerns off the court that the Magic are probably wanting to move on from. And I think some of that would not bode well for him to be a Spur either. It's a lot of it's political talk, so I won't get into it here. But he has certain political views that would not rub Popovich the right way, and there's no way he would accept that kind of trade. So I don't see a guy like that coming over. But if the Magic were willing to move off Mo Bamba and wanted to gather a couple more assets and take their chances and say, all right, we can maybe find a guy we really like at 9, and you're going to give us a couple other things. We'll give you Mo Bamba, and we'll give you a future first next year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they do that. I doubt it, though. Like you said, the 3 teams who are likely picking in the top 3 need to use those picks.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a reason they're picking in the top 3. They are not very good teams, and they can't really afford to be giving up those kinds of picks. I think if you're looking at moving up, you're kind of looking at moving up between 5 and 8 or 4 and 8.
Yeah.
Which, if you're the Spurs, it's probably not really worth it, because then
Yeah.
you're talking about, oh, we'll give you our 9th and the 20th or the 25th to get up into those, just to select a guy we maybe don't really want at one of those picks.
Exactly. And just again, from those teams' perspective, I was just thinking, are they happy with like a big of like a core 3 of, like, if you're Detroit, of DeJounte Murray, Cade Cunningham, and Grant? It's like, I don't think so. I'd rather, again, I think you take Jabari Smith or Cade, or not Cade, Chet or Paolo, and the same thing for the Magic. Murray, Suggs, and Wendell Carter. Is that your 3 that's going to get you? And again, I just don't see that. And then kind of what you mentioned earlier, even trading future picks, the Spurs they just proved it this year. They had nobody like established on their team, and they do not know how to tank. They're not a good tanking team. They're a very competitive team. This is a team, no matter what, this is a very competitive organization. They're really good. They're just not going to be, it's going to be hard for them to ever become like a bottom 5 team. They're just not good at that. They're so competitive. They end up turning
major injuries.
Exactly. Yeah. And DeJounte ends up being an all-star. Like, they just get these young guys, and they ended up having again, not a great season, but they still had a pretty good season for these young guys. And definitely they just showed they're not a tanking team. They're a playing type team. And I would, if I was one of those teams, I wouldn't bet on the Spurs, basically being a bottom 5 team in the next 2 or 3 years. It's just not, I just don't see that for them. So
they refuse.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of refused to do that. So, so that's our answers there at the Global Spur. Next question comes from @SadEvilDad. They ask, could the Spurs go the draft and stash route with one of their picks this year? So again, just looking at the picks that they have right now, we don't know the lottery pick, but it's expected to be 9th. They're going to have the 20th pick in the first round. They're going to have the 25th pick in the first round, and then they're also going to have the 38th pick in the second round. I feel, Ben, that maybe that 38th pick, it could be a really good choice of a draft and stash. I was just looking at ESPN's last mock draft, and they have like 6 or 7 international guys there in the second round, basically projected to go. So I feel like there's players there if you had to do that draft and stash. And again, the Spurs are we've talked about this numerous times here. The Spurs' roster is pretty much almost full coming into this offseason. What are your thoughts about if they can use the draft and stash route?
I would actually argue they could draft and stash 2 guys, the second rounder and your 25th pick. Or the 20th pick, depending on who it is. If it's because I think if they pick a Nikola Jovic, I think he's looking to come over immediately. I don't think he wants to stay in Europe. That's a European guy that you're not stashing. You're bringing him over. But there's probably 1 or 2 guys in this draft that you could draft and hold them over in Europe for a season or 2 when the roster space clears up for them. Or you maybe even send them down to the G League.
Yeah.
For a year and see what happens, see what you got out of them.
That was
some of the guys you're looking at in the European leagues or elsewhere. They're not playing in the Euro League, so you don't have kind of a good comp between how they're playing and what they're playing against.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're playing in like the top Euro League, you're talking about that's pretty comparable to like D1 or even a level that's slightly above D1 college. So if a guy is performing really well in the Euro League, you can say, okay, this guy's legit. Let's bring him over. Whereas if you're talking about a guy who's in the Adriatic League or in a Turkish league, it's hard to compare.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And see, my thought there was, especially with those first round picks, the 20th and 25th, is that I just feel like the Spurs aren't good enough to just keep a guy over there. I think you have to give him a shot here in the NBA, just because of where they're at as a team. And if not, I like what you said, basically send him down to the G League almost the entire season. Have him on the roster, yes, for San Antonio, but basically let them get that NBA experience more so at the G League level. So I really feel like if it is going to be going to the draft and stash, I really see the 30th pick as being that pick.
But like you said, it's if we're assuming that the Spurs are going to use all of their picks, they're not trading anything.
Yeah.
Then the roster space is going to be an issue to keep 3 picks.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I think like you and I said last week or 2 weeks ago, I think they end up trading some of those picks at the end of the day. Yeah, I just feel like we both kind of feel that. Let's go to our final question here from the social media questions. This one actually came from YouTube. So after our episode 655, one of the questions was, how about LSU's Tari Eason at number 9? So looking at Eason right now, his mock average is about 18th. So late first, like right before 20. The earliest I see him on a mock is at 15th, and the latest is at 21st. What are your thoughts, Ben? I know you just wrote about Tari Eason.
Yes, I just wrote about him. Feel free to hit him up at Project Spurs. Defensive menace. Love him on defense. He's gotten sort of Herb Jones comparisons. He's not there. Herb Jones was a guy who played multiple years. Tari Eason also a guy. This is his second year. He's played his freshman year at Cincinnati, sophomore year at LSU. Was sixth man of the year in the SEC, but was basically a starter. I think he technically only started 4 or 6 games maybe, but he was playing starter minutes. I think he averaged the most minutes on the team.
Oh, okay.
So, this is a guy who was basically a starter at the SEC level, played very well, but he's not a shooter. But he's got great defensive versatility. He's playing defense probably 1 through 4. And he just has to work on his shot. He's got kind of a catapult shot, kind of releases it, brings it to his shoulder and catapults it. Somebody went medieval on me or what I read, and they were like, yes, it's like a trebuchet. I'm like, first of all, nobody knows what that word means or how to pronounce it. So let's not get fancy. It's a shot put. All right. It's a shot put is what he's doing, or a slingshot, whatever. It's not a pretty shot right now.
Yeah, that is, when you say shot put, that does not sound pretty. Nope.
Right, yeah, it can be fixed. It's not too big an issue. He's shot just under 30% from 3, but he also shot, I think, near 80% from the free throw line, if I'm not mistaken. I hope that number is right. Last I looked, I think that was it. But a lot of his shots or a lot of his buckets are on putbacks. He goes after the offensive glass really hard. He goes after the defensive glass really well. He has a knack for being in the right place at the right time and getting his hands on the ball and getting putbacks and getting, relatively close shots within 15 feet. So he's very good at that. He's very, despite he's 6'8", he's like 215 or 220, despite being somewhat thin or light, I guess, he's very strong. He has a very strong upper body. So that's how he muscles through and gets some and ones. That's how he gets to these rebounds. So I think at 9, right now, as it stands, it might be a reach. But I think after next week, and we get to watch him in the combine, get his measurables on top of what we get to see him playing against other guys who are at his level, who are at his size, that will give us a better idea as if we really should be punching him up mock draft boards.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, especially that you said that he's going to be showing up at the combine. So that'll be somewhere to watch him, like you said, against the players and kind of in his talent level or in his we're going for the same kind of positions here. Or yeah. All right. So now let's go to our next topic, Ben. And this is kind of just some quick updates. There hasn't been a lot on the mocks. They're kind of everybody's just waiting for the lottery to happen first before they update their boards.
For sure.
So just a few first round updates. And also I want to kind of, like I mentioned earlier, I want to kind of dive into the second round prospects. And I want to remind Spurscast listeners that this is also a video presentation now. You can watch it on our YouTube channel, Project Spurs Network. So first, mock updates and second round prospects. So let's first go to keep an eye on the first round. So there's a new player kind of at that 9th mention. This is Dyson Daniels, a 6'6" guard from the G League Ignite team. He's mocked to go about 13th. So right now 9th would be a little bit early. And then a player who you mentioned earlier, Ben, Nikola Jovic, he had a 20th mention there, and we know the Spurs have the 20th pick. He's 6'10" from Mega Mozart, and he's mocked to go about 24th, so it's kind of right in his range. What do you have any thoughts on or comments about Dyson Daniels and Nikola Jovic?
Yeah, Dyson Daniels might actually be taller than 6'6" at this point. There's
Okay.
this weird mystery around his actual height. People are convinced he's actually 6'8" or 6'9" now.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, I think that changes a lot of things for him. I think with that kind of size, he's playing mostly guard. He's going to be able to play kind of a point forward there for you at 6'8" or 6'9", if that's his height.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he made it up into the top 10, getting an extra 2 or 3 inches on his height. I mean, that's huge, especially if his wingspan corresponds to that. If he's got a plus wingspan and it stays plus even after the added height. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some mock drafts move him up even a little bit from 13.
Okay.
Just based on fit and things like that. Nikola Jovic, I think I've talked with Evan Townsend about this. We've had a long discussion.
Mm-hmm.
We feel that he is very much a strong Spursy guy.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
We like everything he does. He's going to have to play defense a little better, but his offensive game is nice right now. It's going to need a little bit of tweaking and probably, some help with the shot selection. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's doing a lot for his team playing in that league. So we like him a lot. Well, I think him at 20 would be money. That's a chef's kiss pick right there.
Yeah, and that's interesting again because he's kind of right in that range, like we said, 24th. And again, when it's the 20th pick, you can be a little bit more, not really taking a lot of risks there, but just kind of being. There's not as much pressure there compared to at that.
And I would argue it's really not that much risk at 20.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Yeah, especially if he's like in that and kind of in that range, like I said, 24. So now, Ben, let's get into just a few picks. The first group is players that have been mentioned on mocks, and then the second group is just players who average right at kind of close to 38. So first player is Kennedy Chandler, 6. We talked about him 2 weeks ago because he was actually on some mocks in the first round. Kennedy Chandler, 6 foot out of Tennessee, a guard. He's mocked to go 26. Leonard Miller, 6'9", out of Fort Erie International Academy, mocked to go 35th. David Roddy, 6'6", out of Colorado State, mocked to go 40th. Justin Lewis, 6'7", out of Marquette, mocked to go 40th also. And then a new player, Harrison Ingram, 6'8", out of Stanford, mocked to go 43rd. And Noah Magaro, who used to work here at Project Spurs, he works for Pounding the Rock. He reported recently that Harrison Ingram did work out for the Spurs. So he just recently reported that, so that we know that the Spurs have some interest. And then players who are kind of close to that 30th range, we have Max Christie, who you've written about, 6'6", out of Michigan State. His mock average is about 37th. And then the guy who you mentioned 2 weeks ago, Jake Laravia, 6'8", out of Wake Forest, mock average is about 39th. So I kind of like how you did last time. I like how you did that, where you're like kind of just knock off the players that probably aren't, the Spurs don't have too much interest in or would fit well with the Spurs, and then kind of the players who you would like there at 38.
Yeah. So Kennedy Chandler is a guy I don't think the Spurs have any interest in. I think we talked about that 2 weeks ago too.
Yeah, that's cool.
6 feet tall point guard. That's just not what they're looking for, and he doesn't do other things well enough to compensate for the lack of height. So I think they're out on him.
Okay.
David Roddy is tough. I really like David Roddy. So this is nothing against David Roddy, but he is 6'6". He is big. He plays much bigger than 6'6", but the Spurs already have a guy like that, and his name is Keldon Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really need another guy like that. They need someone who is a true wing, who's going to move like one, and who's going to shoot the ball. And David Roddy just isn't that guy, unfortunately.
Okay.
Harrison Ingram, I believe he was actually named Pac-12 Freshman of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
Really, despite having a very roller coaster season, he can shoot it. He can shoot it in spurts. He's not consistent, and I don't know if some of that is him being young or him just not quite having figured things out. I think him at 38, it would not be the worst thing. You can take a shot on him at 38. Yeah. That would not be an issue at all. He's one of those long, lanky wings who's athletic and can do other stuff too. So I'm in. I'd be in on that pick. I would like Leonard Miller. If he falls to the second, there's a lot of people who are like really hyping up Leonard Miller, Some of it is because you have him listed at 6'9" here. Some people think he's 6'10".
Oh, okay.
I saw a comparison for him to Paul George, which I thought was a little ridiculous, especially because we just don't know a whole lot about Leonard Miller. He's a high school kid who was originally going to go to college this year and realized he was age eligible for the draft, declared, and is testing the waters.
Oh, okay.
So he's a bit of a mystery man, but I want to say he got an invite to the combine, so we should see him there. And honestly, with Justin Lewis, I don't know enough about Justin Lewis to speak intelligently on him, so I'm not going to say anything. He is a guy I have my eye on, though. I'm probably going to end up writing him up after I've taken a look at some tape and really gotten a better look at him.
Okay.
As far as Max Christie goes, he's a guy who could still return to Michigan State. He went into the draft, but I don't believe he hired an agent, so he's testing the waters.
Okay.
That will give us a better idea of if scouts, front offices are liking what they're seeing from him in those drills, other stuff. But it's another 6'6" guard.
Yeah.
The Spurs can only collect so many long, lanky dudes before you realize, well, we probably need a 6'8", a 6'9", or a 6'10" guy to just kind of really fill this thing out. So he also did not shoot it as well as he probably could have, even as a freshman. He was, I think, the number 5 shooting guard in the country in that recruiting class last year. And as far as Jake Laravia goes, that's a guy I've been very high on. I recently wrote about him as well. He's a guy that Evan Townsend really likes as well. He and I see eye to eye on a lot of things. Definitely see eye to eye on Jake Laravia. He kind of does all those little things really well. He sees the floor. He has a high IQ. He's not super athletic, but he's athletic enough. He hits shots. He makes smart basketball plays. He's a solid defender. It's, there's nothing glaringly bad about his game, but there's nothing that makes your eyes pop out of your head and we're like, oh my God, did he just do that?
Yeah.
He's just a very solid player who was a very safe pick, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and that's a guy who you feel like after the combine might move up, right, and up into that first round. And I think something to keep an eye on is, like, I was talking to you about this in private messages, and that I really value Sam Vecenie or Venese's opinion of the Athletic. Yeah. So I really value his opinion on players, and so he actually had Laravia pretty high. So again, if he sees something in Laravia, I think that he's definitely has a lot of potential there. All right, so and now Spurscast listeners, Ben and I will take a quick break to listen to a word from our sponsors. NBA playoff action is nonstop at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the NBA playoffs? With DraftKings same-game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets like which team will win, total threes made, total rebounds, and more, and boom, you have a shot at an even bigger payout. Right now, all customers can place a same-game parlay with 3 or more legs and get a free bet back up to $25 if one leg doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's promo code TBPN. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, and we're back, Ben. Let's go ahead and continue this episode here. Spurscast episode 656. Yes, okay. So last topic is just kind of some news and notes. The first thing I want to project here is kind of, I was looking at it because the lottery is coming up on Tuesday, so we know that it's Tuesday, May 17th. This coming Tuesday. Ben and I are recording this on a Thursday, this episode. So, we'll come back and have another episode after we get those actual results. And so, Ben, as I was kind of just looking at the official percentages from the NBA, the odds, I was noticing, at first I just listed them all out, first all the way down to where the Spurs are supposed to be. And I noticed that they actually put the percentages, and I kind of listed basically in that format from best percentage to worst percentage. And what's really interesting to me is that, they had, of course, their best chances of getting the ninth pick. That's 50.7%. Then, of course, 10th is 25.9%. Then it becomes interesting that their third best odds are actually to get fourth, so 5.7%, and then third is next at 5.2%. Now again, that's a very small percentage, 5%, 4.8%. But again, first is down the line here at 4.5%, and then second 4.8%. But they basically have a better chance, according to the odds, of getting the first pick than they do of getting 11th or 12th. And that's kind of interesting, the fact that they probably won't drop back. There's only a 3% chance at 11th and then a 0.1% chance of falling all the way back to 12th. Did you have any comments, Ben, about just the Spurs entering the lottery here coming up on Tuesday?
No, I'm just excited for Tuesday. It's I think every year that they've done the new format where the top 3 or 4 teams all have the same odds to get those top 3 picks. Something crazy has happened. Someone has moved up. I mean, I think the year the Pelicans got Zion, it was based. I think they were outside of the top 3 picks. I think they were supposed to be the 4th or 5th pick, I want to say, and they moved up to the first pick and got Zion and pissed off every single Knicks fan in existence.
And I think the Memphis is a similar thing with getting Ja that same year, I think, for what I recall.
I believe
they made a huge jump.
So the potential for chaos and anarchy, I would say, is high, despite what the odds for the picks might say. So just buckle in, enjoy the ride, and if you hear the Spurs get called early at 9, just be thankful they didn't get called earlier at 11.
Yeah.
Despite getting 12 being a 10th of a percentage point. But I mean, if you think about it, their odds of getting a top 4 pick are overall about 20%.
So, yeah.
So if you like to play the numbers game, folks, there are your numbers.
Yeah, and again, like if they could just I just think for me, I think it is definitely like a 3-player draft. So they can just get any of those top 3. Like I think whether it's Jabari Smith, Chet, or Paolo, they would be in very good. Just in a really good
actually,
spot.
what might even be more ideal is if they somehow move up to just 4. Those 3 bigs are all going to be off the board.
Yeah.
If those 3 teams don't choose any of those 3 bigs, somebody's getting fired. Period.
Yes.
Maybe that night, or the night of the draft, rather. But assuming that all 3 of those bigs are picked and you have Jaden Ivey left over. Great consolation prize, but probably not a guard the Spurs are looking for. That would be their opportunity to pounce on people and say, give us some future picks. We'll give you the 4th. Give us a deal. I know there are some of you teams out here who are desperate and who want the opportunity to draft a shooting guard like Jaden Ivey. We're giving you the opportunity for the right price. Come at me, bro.
Okay, so yeah, I mean that's again they have a good, like you said, when you put all those 4 picks together, they have like a 20% chance, like when you put those ranges. So again, that's going to be something fun to watch on Tuesday, May 17th. Again, they're in the 9th spot right now, so they have their best chance of trying to jump there in terms of recent years that they haven't been a playoff team, the Spurs. All right, Ben, and then our final topic is the news that it's not really news. It's just like, for me, it's just been a story that I really didn't want to follow because I just didn't make a big deal out of it. For me, but apparently this became a big deal here in San Antonio. So this topic is called home games in other places. So what happened was about a week or 2 ago, reports started to come out that the Spurs were going to ask the city of San Antonio to kind of amend their contract with the city where they can play 4 home games next season in different cities and also venues. So one game they got it approved by the city. So now one game next season is going to be played in Mexico, the country. Then one game is going to be played here in San Antonio, but at the Alamo Dome, the old place where the Spurs used to play for some celebration about the team's history. And then 2 games are going to be played in Austin at the Moody Center, which apparently just had some new renovations and stuff. So again, 4 home games. They still belong to the Spurs, but they're going to be in different venues and cities in this case. Now, there was a lot of drama here in San Antonio where a lot of people, I think fans started to think that the Spurs were going to leave. The reason why I didn't think this is because the Spurs had just a few months ago, they had announced that they were going to build like a new multi-million-dollar facility for a new practice facility, and they're going to have all sorts of other stuff, incentives and stuff there at that place here in San Antonio. So again, But them just announcing that a few months ago that they're going to invest in the city and stay, a little bit, stay long term. I didn't think that this story was going to be a huge deal. Again, I can see the perspective. I went to, I covered games this year. There was a lot of games where the fans were, there was just, the arena wasn't sold out. I will tell you, the games that were sold out this year were like the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Bulls. And the reason why is because their fans were there. And like those Lakers games, you could hear it on TV. It almost sounded like it was like a Lakers home crowd. So again, when you're a rebuilding team, Pop even said it. Coach Pop said this is a rebuilding season right now. So when you're a rebuilding team, you're not in the contention. It's going to be hard to get those crowds that you used to have when you were a title contender with, Kawhi, Timmy, Manu, Tony, all those kind of players on the team. So unfortunately, they got it. And so they're saying that they're going to try to broaden their fan base, basically. So reaching out to Mexico, to Austin, that kind of thing. They basically just want to, again, using this season where it's going to be a very similar season to this one, again, probably like play-in range, or maybe they'll be like a top 8 kind of team in the West. But again, we don't expect a championship team right now coming in to next season. So again, you're using that season to do that. And so it became such a big deal here in San Antonio that the managing partner, Peter J. Holt, actually had to write a letter to city to all the fans, and he basically said in his letter on Tuesday that the team has no plans to move right now, and he also ended it with "We are here to stay." That's what he said there. So again, he's just reassuring the fans that the Spurs aren't looking to leave. They're not. I know a lot of people get scared because of what just happened recently with the Sonics a few years ago, and they ended up leaving and then never came back and all that kind of stuff. So, what are your thoughts there, Ben, on that story that's kind of been out? Again, I didn't really want to cover this because I didn't think it was a big deal, but apparently a lot of people were talking about it. Go ahead.
It's San Antonio fans overblowing things. Also, here's the reality. This past season, San Antonio finished 26 out of 30 teams in fan attendance. If you don't want your team to leave the city, show up to games. Period. You don't get to complain about them going off and playing home games in other cities or at other venues when you don't show up now. That is the reality. All right. So take a look in the mirror first before you start complaining. Oh, they're trying to move them. Oh, they're trying to see if if other cities or markets are going to take them. They're not doing that. All right. It's 4 games. By the way, one of which is in San Antonio at a historic venue. There's nothing wrong with that. This is an Alamo Dome that has hosted Final Fours. Okay.
It's hosted Spurs championships. I used to go to those when I was a kid at those games. So.
Exactly. So it's not like these are completely unknown places. They have their G League team in Austin. That makes perfect sense. You want to try and go to Mexico? Great. I think that's fantastic. Why wouldn't you try and get fans from Mexico to be San Antonio Spurs fans? Why would you not do that? These are just great opportunities to expand your brand is what it comes down to. You don't have superstars like LeBron who are just automatically going to attract people. It doesn't work like that for San Antonio. The other thing is, with them going to these other places, Houston's not doing that. Dallas isn't doing that. And Houston is a garbage team. They don't have this. They don't have the history Spurs do. They don't have the rings that the Spurs do. All right? They have the 2, and they got them from Hakeem Olajuwon. And I'm sure Kenny Smith would love to take credit as well. But the Spurs, over the course of decades, playoff runs, always competitive. Those 2 other teams in the state of Texas can't say that. And their fans are very local. They are centralized for that reason. The Spurs are just trying to take advantage of opportunities for new fans to come in. And a lot of the people who are complaining about them playing at other venues are kind of the older fans, I would imagine, who feel very protective of their Spurs. But it's like, if you felt so protective, go to games. The Spurs may not feel the need to do this if you're helping sell out crowds every game, or even if you're averaging in the middle of the pack for NBA attendance. They probably don't feel the need to go out and do those. And by the way, they got it down from doing it 2 years in a row to just doing it for 1 year. Because they heard what everybody had to say, and they realized, okay, people are clearly upset, so let's get this. We've already agreed to do this, so we just got to kind of minimize some damage here, and that's what they've done. So everybody just leave it alone. It's not a big deal. The fact that you all made Peter J. Holt come out here and write a letter is insane. He shouldn't have to write a letter to reassure you that the Spurs are staying. They're building a huge new facility in San Antonio. You don't dedicate that much money to a facility like that so you can up and leave. That's insane. That's also a terrible use of your money, which if you're Holtz, you don't generally use your money in a poor manner.
So I kind of agree. I agree there. It's just like this again because of that the fact that facility is being built. That's why I didn't think too much like, oh, they're going to leave. No, like I knew that because I've been to a lot of the games this year. I covered the majority of them. There is media, and again, the attendance is just not there. And I understand, this team has this city, the fans have a very high bar. I mean, this is a team that's been competitive championship level team for just almost like 20 straight years, and the fact that now this is finally their downtime when they're finally becoming that rebuilding team. So it is an adjustment for the fans. And again, so I just feel like this is like, in a way, it's like the perfect opportunity, like you said, those 1 or 2 seasons they were going to do this. This is like the right time right now at this time, just because again, they know the attendance right now at home is not going to be what they want, because again, this is kind of this is that rebuilding phase. Coach Pops told us, this year multiple times, this was a rebuilding season, and that's kind of where they're in right now as a team. They're kind of in a transition right now at this point. Maybe they land one of these top 3 picks. Maybe they get a top 3 pick, and then who knows? Maybe they start their path again, where they start building a team that starts becoming dominant again, and then you'll start to definitely see fans start coming back and selling out the arena when you're like a top 4 team out west and stuff like that. So again, we just wanted to cover here on the Spurscast. I know it's kind of been the one thing that's been mentioned. I also think that maybe too, because there hasn't been a lot of news, like it's kind of just been dead right now in the rumor mill. There's just really nothing going on right now. Next week it'll be more. It'll ramp up once we learn who the Spurs are going to what lottery position they're going to have. So that, again, things could change. All right, so don't forget to visit ProjectSpurs.com, Spurscast listeners. Any offseason news, make sure to check that out over on Project Spurs. Ben continues to get you ready for the draft coming up in June with the Spurs Prospect Watch series. So his most recent one, I had just checked it. Who was it over, Ben? I just forgot. I was the one who edited it.
I just got Tari Eason.
Yeah, Eason. There you go. It was Eason. Yes, correct. And we covered him earlier. So So again, you have so many, and again, so there's like a lot of them out there. So for sure, check out Ben's work. He really works hard on those. Definitely check those out. All right, thanks to Ben for joining me here on this episode of the Spurscast, and also thanks to Joe Garcia for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.